given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Care Talk. I want to continue the discussion on our mental health and well-being. I'm going to be also touching on civilian staff, non-uniform staff. We're also going to talk about officers as well, because again, we both kind of work in that same environment. We both deal with the same pressures, the same stressors, and I figured this would be a great dialogue. I just want to get at it one more time, but I want to bring in another perspective. So of course, I have author, Cages or Cocoon, Connie Alleyne. Connie, thanks for coming on.
Of course. Hi, everyone. Connie Alleyne here. I'm the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy, and I'm also the podcast host of The Fly Behind the Wall and the author of The Cage with Her Cocoon. I'm ready. I'm ready when you are.
Guys, by the way, the book's available on Amazon now. Inmate Manipulation Decoded. Thank you, Connie, for the title. I think it's definitely worth a read. I can't wait for you guys to purchase the book and tell me what you think. I just found out I'm number 72 on Amazon for criminology. So
nice.
But I'm also number 5,289 in children's books. So I told I don't know. I just found that out. So I don't know what happened there, Connie. But guys, this is definitely going to be a serious topic we're going to be discussing. I touched on it quickly in a video the other day, but I knew I was going to explore it with Connie. So we were going to, obviously, we talked about doing it today. So we definitely want to touch on some of the areas that I touched on in the last video. But also I want to bring on Connie's perspective as well, because Connie also holds the perspective of the non-uniform staff as well as custody, by the way. But just overall, just in general, what she brings just has value to the channel. So I just want to see where the dialogue goes. And guys, even if the dialogue, it goes past a half an hour, we don't know how far it's going to go. We're going to build it along the way. I promise what we put always has value. And when we feel it's good enough is when we end it. But it's all for you. When we feel we've done enough for you guys. So if you guys feel that you're worth the hour or however long it is, invest, because that's the key. Sometimes our videos are long, sometimes they're short. But in the end, it's really about the message. And some messages you just can't cover in 5 minutes. It's not 5 tips. It has to be discussed. And we have to make sure that the information is correct. That's why we build off each other. We challenge each other. Okay, guys. So again, the show is Care Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to our sponsor. When we come back, we're going to talk about our mental health and well-being. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it. It's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
All right, Connie. So real quick, when I did this episode a couple of days ago, just me, I think it's like a 12-minute video, just discussing what I feel are important, when it comes to mental health and well-being. I think a lot of it focuses on us, recognizing that we have a concern, but also, can we trust the environment? If we do have that concern, can we trust our peers? Can we trust managers? I mean, is it okay to not be okay, as William Young would say? So right off the bat, I got to ask you, Connie, is this topic taken seriously enough by the agency, by our own peers, by ourselves?
So, I mean, I wouldn't say broadly the agency doesn't take it seriously. I think that, those who truly understand the impact that corrections can have on an individual, if they're in administration in the agency, I think they absolutely take it seriously, because, they are in that mindset of how do we mitigate risk? And that's risk to the staff, that's risk to the population. And when you have a staff that's unhealthy, or you have a staff that's operating from a space of fear, you know that that can create some very challenging situations in the environment. So I wouldn't say that the organization or the agency doesn't take it serious enough. I think sometimes we take for granted how taxing the environment can be on us. And I don't know that we as individuals necessarily take it as serious as we should be taking it. As far as like in facilities, frontline, or, you know, management in the facilities, I think that there are limitations to, you know, how much support they can provide, because they can only provide you with resources that they have access to. And so I think there's challenges along the way, but I absolutely feel that this is a very important subject, and it's something that we all need to be taking seriously. So with us having these conversations, I think the dialogue actually expresses how serious it can be.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I love what you're saying, because I do believe that the agency, the supervisors, we want healthy staff, you know, because again, if we don't have a staff that's healthy, especially with their mental well-being, leads to liability. You know, staff that just can't cope with the pressures of the environment. But it's not even about if they can't cope, actually. It's about, you know, helping them process what is technically abnormal situations. I mean, there's nothing normal about what we have to deal with every day. And I'm not a big fan of saying that we have to normalize the abnormal, because I think that if something gets to us, we shouldn't be afraid to admit that and then find out ways to process that. You know what I mean? However, we need to process it. Now, one thing is that, and we discussed this in the last video, is that someone had asked me once, what's the best tip you could give someone that's entering corrections? Now, of course, I've said, hey, many tips, but if I had to choose one that I figure sets the foundation in order for the other tips to kind of work, it's know who you are going in. You know, if you know who you are going in, then you're able to understand and work against the changes that you feel are negative and affecting you in a negative way. And what I mean by that is, you know, your reactions to the world, if you will. To me, that's one of the big things, is if I'm no longer happy when I'm with the people that should be making me happy. You know, so for me, my family, they know who I am when I'm not in the uniform. And they kind of get a sense of who I'm becoming when I'm taking the uniform off. And I say who I'm becoming because that's where the slow and subtle changes are. So in order for me to know that there's a problem, I have to recognize those slow and subtle changes, because I know me at that most micro level. So anytime that I feel that something shifted me just an inch, I can feel that. And you'll believe it or not, I think our loved ones can also sense it too if they're invested in you that much. Now, if I don't understand myself, if I don't understand the changes I'm going through, then the people that love me can't help me, because I'm going to be resistant. I'll be in denial. I have nowhere to compare and contrast where I was to where I'm at. But one of the things I want to kind of run by you, Connie, is there's that myth, leave home at home and work at work. And I believe there's part of that's true, the home at home. When it comes to work at work, I think that there's a part of us that isn't always about the job. It's who we are as humans. And we're going to see things that we're going to have to process that doesn't always mean we're going to process through the filter of us being professional correctional officers or professional staff that should get used to seeing this every day. We're human. So in the end, when we get home and we go to share whatever those concerns are with our loved ones know who we are without that uniform. So they're best to address on how we need to deal with those concerns from Anthony, not from Officer Gangi. So just to address that first, what's your thoughts on home at home and work at work?
I think that's an ideal situation when you can leave home at home and work at work. But the reality is that you are one whole person. And so as a whole person, you will go into different environments and you're going to always bring your whole self to that environment. And I think it's not a realistic expectation that something went down at work and you just gonna leave it at work and come home, right? Because most of us, we're trying to decompress. We try to use the ride home to kind of work through whatever those thoughts are. Even our to-do list, here's all the stuff I got to get done tomorrow. We try to leave that at least in the car. I know that was a practice that I had, that once I left work, I kind of just, all right, I went through all the crazy of the day. Once I got in the car, I started kind of going through the mental to-do list, things I need to finish up that I didn't finish up the day before or whatever. Or even if there's a situation brewing, this person's on a hunger strike, you know, the thought process about what step are we in that process? You know, it's like, you would like to be able to leave work at work, right? But we're human beings and we've had interactions throughout our day. And I think we have a natural, proclivity to go home and talk to our loved ones about what happened today. And some of us, I think, have gotten in the habit of not doing that because the world where we work at is not so nice, right? And we don't want to bring that into our homes, the doom and gloom of society that no one else talks about. But we put our spouses and our loved ones in a situation where they're unable to provide us with support because we're not sharing, right? Like, how do I know to be sensitive to you or to a certain situation if I've never told you, here are all the things I dealt with at work, right? I mean, interestingly enough, after writing my book, people are like, Connie, you dealt with that at work? You never talked to nobody about it. And I'm like, you know, it's part for us who work there, it's part of our everyday thing, right? But for the person who doesn't work in a non-traditional work environment, they're like, are you crazy? That happened at work? You know, and I think that's what we need to help keep us grounded. Like, the things we experience are not normal, right? And so here it is, we're asking ourselves, we're asking our minds to have a normal response to something that's abnormal. And the body just doesn't work that way. Like, you are who you are. And so when this thing happened and you're like, holy crap, and you might be thinking to yourself, that holy crap moment happened, and now who am I going to talk to? Because we also know we're in an environment where people are trying to cover themselves, where there's a lot of blame going on when situations go down. We know that we got inmate craziness that adds to the fuel of things. We got challenging relationships with some of our colleagues that I think add to it. And so leaving work at work may be difficult because you don't trust the people you work with, right? And so you may need to come home and talk to the people you know who love you about what happened and ask them, like, so what do you think I should do, right? So I think the more that we start to just acknowledge that the environment we work in is very challenging, and it's not as simple as we would like it to be to just leave work at work and home at home. Now, yes, when we come into work, I mean, I think about the people who are at work during the holidays. You're missing your kids unwrap their gifts on Christmas morning, those people who work that shift, right? And so what does that feel like? And how many years have you missed the gifts being opened? Or did you miss Thanksgiving dinner? Or did you miss your New Year's Eve kiss, right? Like, all these things that are like part of our culture that we celebrate. You can't tell me that the stress of missing that is not weighing on you while you're at work. You know, and so I think the more that we're honest with ourselves also, the more that we could try to find ways to help give ourselves what we need to still be effective and our whole self while we're at work.
Touched on a lot of important things, Connie. I mean, one thing about the holidays is how your family feels about you working, and that adding to the stress of I can't even be 100% at the job because when I get home, it's another missed holiday that I have to explain to my family, especially if I got mandated. And maybe I could have been home this one year. And unfortunately, someone was inconsiderate, called out, and now I got to go ahead and cover the shift. And when I say inconsiderate, I know emergencies happen, but sometimes, you know, people just, I'm not coming in, not realizing that I just did my shift. I made my sacrifice. My family's planning on me being there, and now I can't because you decided that you don't want to come in for no other reason besides the fact that you don't want to come in. But other things that you touched on is that I thought was great was obviously the change is very slow and subtle. So it's very good that you recognize it when it's happening. So, and obviously allow the help when it's happening, because eventually if you don't, and you don't have that communication with your loved ones, they can't help you because they don't know who you are. I mean, you've shifted so far to the right or the left, whatever way it is, that I don't even know how to help you anymore, you know? And again, that really starts with you recognizing conflict. And one of the things here, guys, is we do work in an environment that they don't want us to be vulnerable, right? But with that said, is we are human. And when, you know, the moment passes, you know, we have to literally take a step back and say, okay, how do I feel about that? How do I feel about what just happened? What I just saw? And the funny thing is, I've even seen this with rookies, where when rookies face a situation that's novel to them, let's say the death of an inmate, because that's usually where people don't know how they should feel. It's how you should feel. You know, I mean, that's pretty much what it is. But having said that, what they'll do is, this may be the first death they've ever seen, inmate or not, right? And then they look at the people that they trust, which are their peers, and they look to see how their peers are reacting. Now, if their peers are laughing and being cynical and just not, you know, being professional about it, they're going to think that it's not okay for them to have a concern. They're going to think it's not okay for them to feel a certain way. Again, death of an inmate can carry a lot of concerns. You know, it's a human being. That's one thing. Second thing is I'm responsible for that life. I feel a certain way when that life gets taken, or the consequences. Am I still going to have a job, even though I did nothing wrong? And I feel that we don't even do enough follow-up with that. After, let's say you have the death of an inmate, everybody goes quick to liability mode, that no one's asking the officer or the staff member, hey, are you okay? Is everything all right with you? How did you process that? So right off the bat, Connie, is the environment. Is the environment promoting that it's okay if you're vulnerable, that we can help, we'll work together? Or is the environment adverse to that? And guys, real quick, be wary of your actions. You know, maybe for some reason you're able to kind of process it in a very cool and collective manner, because maybe you've dealt with it 100 times before. And maybe with those 100 times, maybe it no longer gets you. I don't know, because I've seen people that dealt with it 100 times and it gets them each and every time. So really depending on the individual. But know for a fact, someone's watching you. And like William Young said it, William Young says the thing where it's okay to not be okay. But are you showcasing that? So like if I'm a rookie, and as I said, and I see you and you're laughing and, you know, you're not taking this seriously, I may think that that's who I have to be. And now I feel in conflict with that. Now, here's the funny part, guys. Check this out. Just going on to my pedestal here real quick. I'm going to feel conflict with that. But because I trust the people that I'm looking at, and, you know, they're my senior officers, I may start to shift my beliefs, you know, because my behavior is going to start changing because I want to be more in line with them. But I'm going to tell you something, guys. I haven't processed it yet. And eventually, all that is going to catch up. But it won't catch up in the working environment. It's going to catch up when you have this rookie on the job who maybe only has 6 or 7 months. But in that 6 and 7 months, maybe they've, you know, gotten into some activity, seen some things, and they're already burned out. And not only are they feeling it, but their loved ones are, because that's where they feel more comfortable to lash out. I mean, what's your thoughts on all that, Connie? Is that a lot?
I mean, that's a lot. I mean, especially because, you know, people are looking to see what is the appropriate response, right? Like, you know, I remember there being an inmate suicide, and everyone, like a lot of the staff who treated this inmate were sad. And I'll never forget, one of my supervisors cried. And maybe because, you know, we're civilians, you know, we're medical, like it's okay. But I feel like it's a human response, like a life was lost. And, you know, I think seeing that supervisor cry allowed others to feel comfortable. I think it's the psychological safety that people are looking for them to be able to say, I can express an emotion. Right. And that emotion doesn't necessarily have to always be anger. Right. Like it's okay when we get angry and we're fired up, right? Someone could say you're passionate, or like, yeah, you know, you get a lot of people who kind of put the battery in your back and encourage that. But in these instances where there's situations happening where we actually feel sad because something has happened, and it isn't necessarily just a staff person has passed away, because when that happened, everyone kind of walks around in the somber mood, and it's culturally acceptable in our environment that we lost a fellow staffer, right? Whether it was civilian or employee. But I think that we have to normalize that when a life is lost, it's okay for your natural response to come out. It's okay for us to go seek out help and say, hey, this is really messing with me. Like, I'm unable to focus, or, you know, I'm just thinking about what I saw. I remember there was someone on the critical incident team who I worked closely with. And I remember her saying, as much as we go out from facility to facility to support staff anytime there's a critical incident, there's been critical incidents that she was involved in where she felt completely like she didn't have and she knew the tools. This is what you need to do to get through, right? So she had to seek out support. Like, this is really messing with me. I keep replaying the incident in my head. I keep seeing images of what happened. And I don't think we talk about that, right? You walk into a scene and there's blood all over the place, right? That is not normal, right? And so what did that feel like the first time you walked in and you saw that? You know, it's not enough for you to be like, okay, I just got to go write the report and then I'm gonna go home. Because even once you go home, you're still going to have thoughts about what you just saw, because that's just not a normal experience. So, you know, for me, it really is us being our brother's keeper in that way. Like, sometimes it may take your peer to be like, yo, you okay? I mean, it's really just that simple. We can check in on each other to make sure. I mean, I'd like to say, yeah, you know, management's supposed to, and the organization and the agency, like, yeah, okay. But we work with each other day in and day out. Something just happened. We should be able to say, hey, are you feeling all right? Hey, you want to go take a break? Can, you know, even if you got to find out, can you relieve this person? Let me relieve this person because they're still not looking right, even though they had a moment, right? And it's okay. And the person may say, nah, I'm fine. But sometimes that question gives them permission to say, I'm not feeling so great. I need a moment. And sometimes we need to do that for each other.
You know, you said something key about your friend and the support. You know, I think a lot of people still think no matter how many shows we do that there's taboo. I can't admit I'm vulnerable, Games. I just can't do it. So I think we still have to build that trust back in the environment where management can come in and have these teams on site that know if this happens, then we have to be there, as opposed to waiting for someone to say, we need you. You know, let's show that these are the situations that we expect reactions to. And yes, inmate suicide, inmate death could require the team to be there automatically. Now, this helps because then the people that are going through something, one thing is that you're being very proactive with them. But second thing is you're telling them, yeah, maybe it's okay. Just by showing up automatically, that it's okay for me to feel a certain way about this. And those teams that do show up, they're what they call CISM teams, like critical incident stress management teams. They have to be proactive on site. Means they don't sit at the facility, wait for people to come. They go out there, introduce themselves, and kind of gauge the interactions they're having with people. And also, the team itself is reactionary, yes, but very preventive. It's very preventive because, again, you're getting there, you know, yes, after an incident, but you're also helping out from hoping that another incident doesn't occur. But Connie, what's your thoughts on that? What's your thoughts on, you know, kind of being on that scene before being asked, and just knowing that these are the circumstances that we should be there for, and not wait for staff to say, I need you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we do need to be more proactive. You know, every state is different. And there's some incidents, you know, where it's an automatic, like there is no waiting for someone to call and say, we need a support team here. There's some incidents where they just come out. And, you know, I recall not calling for a critical incident team to come through, and they came through any day anyway. And, you know, as they were kind of walking the different areas, they found a staff person in a room crying, right? Like, we didn't know that the person was so upset and this was going on, but like, not everyone is going to feel comfortable to go sit down in a group setting and express how upset they are or how hurt they are about something. So I think there's a certain level of sensitivity that we have to have, knowing that people will need support in different ways, and that we're just there to do that, right? Like in these instances. And I also feel like maybe we don't need to be so reactive that there has to be an incident, right? Like, are there times where we're just having group discussions, right? I mean, I don't know if we do that proactively, where, you know, once every quarter we might talk about whatever, you know, maybe it's, you know, how do we establish work-life balance? You know, maybe it's how do we cope, you know, on our own? How do we deal with doubles? How do we deal, you know, like, it would be good for us to proactively have these open discussions, whether it's, you know, we have a meeting first shift, second shift, third shift, so we can kind of get everybody. Maybe it's during a time where we know we're going to already have some sort of operational pause, right? We know today someone will be here and this will be a great day for us to kind of pull people into these little sessions. I mean, certainly we have to get into a space where we can just be more supportive, and sometimes just giving the staff information without them having to ask for it, because now I have a resource in my hand if I need it.
Yeah, I think that's well said, Connie. And you know what? I'm kind of just going back and revisiting some of the stuff. I want to ask you something. So, from an officer's perspective, that's what I got. You know, that's my background. Wearing the uniform. Now, I would like to think in my career I wore the uniform. The uniform didn't wear me. All right, but there is some shift. You know, but again, a controlled shift, if you will. Now, if I had a situation, I had a problem, let's say dealing with, let's say something like, let's say the death of an inmate. You know, because that seems to be the most controversial of how we should deal with. Obviously, we all know a death of a staff member, we all better feel a certain way about that. You know, death of the inmate is more controversial because there could be the us versus them mentality. There could be a lot of reasons why we're not given a chance to process that, because the environment may not allow that. They may see that as definitely a sign of weakness. Now, I believe in the, especially like we said, you know, home at home and work at work to a certain extent. You know, I believe the work at work part is kind of tough. But now if I had the death of an inmate and I went to one of my, you know, my staff members to go talk to them, and they were like, you know, Gangi, don't be a wuss. You know what I mean? You know, straight up, you're not ready for this. Because I could see that happening from a custody perspective. You know, you got to be able to handle this, you know, and it's like, yeah, but the funny thing is I don't want to bring work home to that extent, but I'm also not being given a chance to handle it here either. Like, you're not helping me by saying, you know, you're being a wuss or whatever. That's not helping me. I'm telling you as my brother or as my sister, whatever the case may be, that I feel a certain way about that. The last thing you want to do is judge me for feeling that way. I'm not looking for judgment, you know? And same thing with management. Some people are afraid they're going to get in trouble. Well, I'm not looking for consequences. I'm looking for benefit here. So if I have a problem and I go to talk to you, and you think that you can easily help me through it by telling me not be a wuss and just pass judgment on how I feel, you're forcing me to bring it home. You're forcing me to not find that balance in which I'm leaning towards you because I feel that you're the most professional to help me. You're my partner, so you understand. You've walked the walk. You dealt with it. You know, so you can help me deal with the human emotion partnered with how I need to be as a professional. But if you don't help me out at the job to process that, when I admit I'm vulnerable and this is how I feel, now you're forcing me now to go home, but you're also telling me I shouldn't go home and tell them. So now you're also forcing me to bottle it up. You know, so definitely the environment is a very big part on what we also take home, because maybe they can help, you know, soothe us during the moment. When, you know, the funny thing about being an officer, and I'm sure it's the same for you guys as well, especially on the medical side, but, you know, everybody has different things that can cause stress or anxiety, right? So I only know from my experience, but I'm sure every department is faced with different stresses and the unknown, the anxiety of it all, right? But I'm going to give a scenario about being an officer, but again, not to minimize, just from my background here, because I'm sure medical can give me a lot as well. I just get through a code. I'm out of breath, stressful situation, barely made it out this one. But there's going to be no second for me to breathe here, because at any moment, another code can pop off. So you have the stress of the moment and the anxiety of it's not over. Something can always happen again. And because we connect that to our survival, because at least for corrections, they push it in us in the academy. And then as you work, the hours that you put in, it becomes part of you. You can't turn it off, because if you turn it off, you're leaving yourself vulnerable to be hurt. Like I can't turn that off, because at any moment I have to be ready. I mean, people that have retired for 15, 20 years that are still hypervigilant, that still just can't turn it off because they're afraid at any moment that they could get hurt. You're no longer working in the jail, but they've learned not to trust people in general. That's another thing. We're working in a profession where you can't trust people, and the nicest of people are the ones you can't trust the most. Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's true. It teaches you these things to survive, but it doesn't tell you how you can turn it off. And I think that becomes a bigger concern as, the more time you have in, the more that this becomes that behavior, the norm. And if you don't have that base, that foundation to go back to, all you're going to do is become that person who, no trust for anybody, inside, outside world, always hypervigilant, just can't get that sense of a breather, because you're going to be weak at any moment. But Connie, not being able to turn it off, I mean, that's got to have a toll, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, certainly not being able to turn it off leads to so much, right? Because we know that at the root of stress, or at the root of many heart attacks and indigestion and gastric issues and sleep deprivation, all of that is fed by stress and by what we experience in the environment. What I would say is that the practical intelligence that we gather, the social intelligence that we gather, those things can't be thrown to the side as we decide who I am going to talk to about the situation I'm going through, right? Whatever that is, I think if you know the cynical people you work with, that's not the person you want to go to say, yo, this is really bothering me, right? Because that person is not probably capable of giving you what you need in order to not take that home. So I think being able to discern who are the right people for me to even talk to, like, because that's one, when you first started that thought process was just not being able to go to people, right? And the fear of hearing that person say, suck it up. That's not the right person for you to go to, right? You need to be looking for other resources or other people that you might be able to talk to about what's going on. So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing about the turning it off and turning it on, I mean, I think that's very difficult, especially when you have years of being on, right? Years and years of being on, and then it becomes second nature. And then, for just anyone, not even just someone in corrections, survival is a human instinct. And so when you're put in a space where you're just trying to survive, and sometimes the environment feels like I'm trying to just survive here, right? Because you don't feel supported, because you don't feel like you have any outlet or any recourse, that instinct of surviving means that you're always on. And I just want to just throw some caution out there that always being on and always being hyper vigilant, like that is extremely stressful. For you to be in that state all the time certainly does no good to your physical health as well as your mental health. Because I mean, even now, I'm not in facilities, but you'd be hard pressed to get me to sit by my back to an exit or entrance, right? Like I'm always about the positioning and where I'm going to sit when I go someplace, even when I'm with my family. Someone said to me the other day, Connie, you never have a pocketbook. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't. Everything I need is in my pocket, right? I'm not a fan of wearing high heel shoes. I love them. I think they're beautiful, but like I'm always prepared. I usually have on very comfortable shoes. And I know that all of that, it comes from working in an environment where you've got to be prepared for whatever's going to happen, right? And that means I don't need to have to go run and go get a pocketbook to get my keys. No, my pocketbook, my ID, my money, all in my pockets. And because we've got to get out, we got to get out. I want no reason to have to go back in. So I think there's some things that we just need to be intentional about. Like, so I know that these are things that go on in my head, and whether it causes me anxiety to be by an exit or not, like I have to be able to manage that. And I feel it's the same thing as we are in these facilities day in and day out, being able to manage the things you need to not feel the stress, to not feel that anxiety that you might feel. And it's what that looks like for you, right? Does that mean you need to seek some support outside, right? Maybe it's not your family. Maybe it's going to a professional. And that's not every professional you go to is trying to put you on medication, because I know that's why a lot of people don't go see a psychiatrist outside or a psychologist outside or go get therapy outside, because they think everyone's going to push medication on them. That's not the case. You can literally go and talk to someone, and that in of itself may be a way that you help yourself if the environment isn't giving you that outlet.
Yeah, and there's still people that they have night terrors because their mind is so active that they don't even sleep in the same bed with their loved ones, because they wake up in violent acts of aggression, just because they can't escape it, not even in their sleep. I think the gist of it all too right now is that if I felt that I couldn't turn something off, because there are certain things, guys, that I believe at this point, after 18 years, I've been able to turn off. But there's certain things I don't. Like, I agree with Connie that the chair thing is something that you feel it. You're not even looking for it. You just feel it. And if you're sitting in the wrong position, you feel it. And you don't even have to know how the room's laid out. It's just, I don't feel right when I'm sitting here and your family's looking at you as you shift. It's like, hey, can I sit where you're sitting? Oh, you just want the booth. No, the booth is actually facing here. But sometimes you don't even realize it. Your body sensed it. You sensed it, but just not consciously. But through my experience, there are certain things where I have learned to turn off, like literally, maybe it went so far as my wife's not an inmate. Why am I talking to her that way? Why am I giving her orders? Why am I talking to my children this way? So I think the one piece of advice, and this really does come from those with experience in the profession. That's why I feel that those that are in the profession could be the best help to people that need to process these concerns, is to definitely at least do this. I'm home. And just keep on reminding yourself that you're home, when you're home. And again, the reason why I'm saying that is because if you don't do that, your default mode will become who you are in the prison. Excuse me. We all have a default mode, and you can't have your default in this profession. You can't have your default mode be home, because God forbid default mode turns on when you're at prison. But the one thing you should have is that when you're home, you should do whatever you can to put yourself into that home position. I'm home. Please, I'm home. But again, it's very tough. And for those that are able to do it and maintain that marriage or maintain that relationship, well done. Because it's definitely something where, I could see now why we have those divorce rates and why, the stress can take us out a lot earlier than the general population. But it's just good to get this thought out. I just wanted to share this dialogue just to let people know we're thinking of them. And I believe, like you said in the last video, to encourage people to admit if there is a concern, but also to encourage people to be part of that environment that allows that to happen. That allows us to, I need help. That's the key. Hey, Connie, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
For me, it's just really, if you feel uncomfortable in who you are and in who you're becoming, try to remember who you were when you started and use that as your barometer. Use that as a way to get you back to your why, right? There's always a reason why, why it's important that you get back centered. There are definitely incidents that are going to happen that are going to pull you out of character sometimes, right? But, I think the important part is to have that self-awareness, to be able to advocate for yourself when you need it. Sometimes your loved ones want to support you. They don't really know what's going on. They don't really understand your work and how your work may be influencing your behavior. And so they don't know how to help you. But the sooner or the more that you push to get the support for yourself, the better off that you'll be. So I would just say, if you can't find that support or the resource internally, I know there's EAP, I know there's critical incident, I know, hopefully there's managers who are open to hearing you and willing to give you support. But if you can't find that, it's okay to go out and get professional support. And that does not necessarily mean medication. That could just be you have some place where you can safely decompress.
I like the way you're saying that, because that's what we're talking about the admitting the vulnerability. I like that, to safely decompress, because that's what I'm trying to tell people. I'm not trying to say that, I don't want people to misinterpret the message. Like, obviously this is a job where, you can have people help you go through it, but you have to be careful of when you expressing it, obviously, because, you still have to have that level of control during those heightened situations. But you're right. At one point, when that's over, when that's past, I need to decompress, because I haven't processed it the whole time. I've been going through it to maintain control, but man, I really got to talk about what just happened, and I would like to think that the environment allows us to do it. And then whatever the environment can't handle, then we could bring that to our families and say, hey, I still have these concerns. Is this job for me? But again, there's still that initial, when it happened, where it just takes one person. Are you okay? And that's all guys, that's all it is. Maybe going to that rookie or whoever it is, are you okay? Is everything good? Having that person on staff that does it is so freaking rewarding, because you'll be shocked what people will turn around, or because you've asked them, say, no, I'm not okay. But they would have never said it if you didn't ask. Very powerful tool. As always, guys, the show is Care Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.